Okay, so we've been learning about this stuff, right? There's a lot here. Um, we've been learning about the if and only if definitions, necessary and sufficient conditions. Um, and we've learned how they connect to each other. So the if and only if is the same as necessary and sufficient conditions, which is the same as definitions. And understanding these is important. Okay, so in this video, I want to try to explain why these having these distinctions in mind matter. Okay, so let's talk about necessary and sufficient conditions. So it can be important for legal issues. Now, here's a kind of an easy example, like just about the value distinguishing necessary and sufficient conditions. Think about being born in the U.S. Okay, how does that relate to being a citizen? Is that a necessary condition or a sufficient condition? So you think about it, being born in the U.S., it's a sufficient condition for being a citizen, but it's not a necessary condition. See the distinction? So getting this distinction helps you understand certain legal categories. Or let's say being at least 35, age 35, is a condition for being president. Okay, there it's a necessary condition for being president, but it's not a sufficient condition. Okay, I hope you're seeing. Okay, and so like knowing whether we're talking about necessary or sufficient conditions, it's going to matter which one we're talking about. I even think about how I'm got this apartment when I was signing the lease. There's a lot of conditions that need to be met. They ask like about my salary, whether I have a job, and blah blah blah. Having a certain salary was a necessary condition for being able to rent my apartment here, but it wasn't a sufficient condition. On the other hand, let's say I'm trying to join some club. Okay, maybe being born into some family is a sufficient condition for being part of that, I don't know, rich club or something. But it might not be a necessary condition. Maybe you can earn your way in or something. So yeah, it matters for legal issues as well as even in theology. So you might be, so in for example, in Christian theology, they care a lot about salvation. Okay, and when we talk about what's needed to be saved, you might want to ask, are we talking about necessary conditions for being saved, salvation, or sufficient conditions? This is an issue that comes up a lot in theology. Some people would say believing in Jesus is that a sufficient condition, or is it a necessary condition, or is it both? It's really not clear, and that's where the theological investigation can happen. Okay, and let's talk about definitions, which is going to be important for legal issues, theology, like what counts as a citizen, right? Or what it does it mean to be a believer or part of a church or something like this. It's also going to be important for politics, which is connected to legal issues, and philosophy. And by politics, I also mean ethics. So think about a lot of times we care about like what is it to be human, right? What does it mean to be human? And if we want necessary sufficient conditions, we want the definition of being a human. So we might say X is a human person if and only if blank, right? And getting a definition of that is going to be really important for how we're going to understand other ethical issues like euthanasia or abortion and so on. Well, right now there's a really important debate about gender, right? Gender is a very important issue. So the issue like X is a woman or a man, okay? It doesn't matter which one. If and only if what? What are necessary conditions or sufficient conditions for being woman? Like, is being biologically female, is that a necessary condition or is it not? Or is it a sufficient condition or not? Right? These are the sorts of things that are argued, but finding good definitions and distinguishing necessary and sufficient conditions, it's foundational for basic ethical issues or very controversial issues. We could also talk about racial questions. There's questions like what, like I'm an Asian American. But what actually is it to be Asian American? X is Asian American if and only if, or X is Asian. We could also talk about this with like someone being black, right? If and only if what? Someone's white, if and only if what? Okay, they're all about necessary and sufficient conditions. So definitions is going to be foundational for clear thinking about any area. Okay, and that's just where the discussion starts. Distinguishing necessary and sufficient conditions, getting the if and only if straight. We define bachelorhood, but there's a lot more, and that's where so much philosophy, so much intellectual exploration can happen. And then we move forward. So I could add other things like it's going to be important for science, it's going to be important for business, but I just picked these 4 at random. So yeah, understanding this, it's foundational to good intellectual thinking. And with that, yeah, see you guys in the Zoom session.